Stay back! You won't win!
Your resistance is futile, human.
We will stop you!
The winter storm was supposed to be the end. Not just a bad blizzard, but the final, fatal blow to humanity. Across the entire United States, a cataclysm of ice and snow descended with a fury no one had ever seen. Highways, the very arteries of the nation, were swallowed whole by glaciers that seemed to grow in minutes. The power grids, our delicate web of light and warmth, collapsed one by one, plunging cities into a dark, frozen silence. And the cold was something else entirely. Temperatures plummeted to levels that, as alien analysts would later note, with detached curiosity, were biologically impossible for human survival. In the early hours, the official toll was grim. At least 14 confirmed dead, but the projections were apocalyptic. Millions more were classified as non-viable, a sterile term for a death sentence. From their silent perch in orbit, the Zoological Council of Zyra observed, they had been watching us for a long time, studying us like a curious but fragile species. Their reports were clinical, precise. Species designation: fragile. Habitat: unstable. Survival odds: negligible. To them, the conclusion was foregone. The storm was an extinction-level event, and humanity's chapter was closing. The planet would be a quiet, icy tomb. But then, something strange started happening. Something that didn't fit their calculations. Down in the heart of the storm, amidst the chaos and the freezing dark, there was movement. The data streams from the surface became erratic, illogical. Under the weight of collapsed hospitals and inside ambulances frozen solid, like ancient fossils, humans were not just dying as predicted, they were disappearing. Experienced doctors, names that should have been on emergency response lists, vanished from public records. Entire hospitals went dark, their systems offline, yet the death toll, which should have been skyrocketing into the millions, flatlined. It held steady, defying every logical model the council had. It was impossible. Humans couldn't survive this. They were fragile. They were weak. They needed their technology, their warmth, their light. The aliens recalibrated their sensors, running diagnostic after diagnostic, searching for the error in their own systems. Surely, their equipment was malfunctioning. But the readings were accurate. The chaos on the ground was real. But it wasn't the chaos of mass extinction. It was something else. Something organized. Something hidden. And then they found it. A new signal, faint at first, then growing stronger, pulsing from the very epicenter of the storm-ravaged continent. It wasn't a weapon system powering up. It wasn't a desperate, planet-wide distress call, begging for help. It was something far more fundamental, far more profound. It was a heartbeat. Not one, but thousands, millions. Synchronized, a rhythmic, powerful pulse that echoed up from the frozen earth. It emanated from the darkened cities, from beneath the snow-covered suburbs, from places that should have been silent tombs. It was a signal of life, defiant and impossibly strong. The Zyran observers were stunned into silence. Their neat classifications, their confident predictions, all shattered in an instant. Down below, in the darkness, humanity wasn't just surviving. They were adapting. They were fighting back against the cold itself. Not with fire or technology the aliens could recognize, but with something else. Something they had never accounted for. Something they were only just beginning to understand. The heart of a species that refused to freeze, that refused to die. The storm wasn't the end. It was a new beginning. And for the first time, the watchers in the sky felt a flicker of something they hadn't expected: fear. The Zyran expedition landed softly, their silver craft a stark contrast against the endless white of the snow-covered ruins. They were exploring what was once a major city in the American Midwest, now a ghost town preserved in ice. As the aliens crunched through the frozen streets, their scanners picked up a faint, anomalous heat signature. They followed it to a collapsed building, where a single human woman sat beside a massive hulking shape. The shape was wrapped in thick thermal blankets, and even from a distance, the aliens could see steam rising from it. The woman's hands were raw and bleeding, yet her face was serene, almost peaceful, as she sat in the biting cold. She seemed entirely unfocused on the advanced alien team approaching her. One of the younger Zyrans, its antennae twitching with curiosity, whispered over the comms, "Is that a pet?" The question hung in the air, a naive attempt to categorize the scene. But then, the scanners shrieked to life. Red alerts filled their helmet displays, warning of extreme biological hazard. The pet was impossibly warm, a furnace in a world of ice. Its internal biology was a chaotic storm of activity, engineered, adaptive, and utterly relentless. It was a predator of the highest order, a living weapon. The woman paid the aliens no mind. She gently stroked the creature's hidden form through the blankets. "Easy, boy," she whispered, her voice a soft murmur against the wind. "They're just watching." The creature, which had started to stir under the blankets, settled back down. A low guttural rumble vibrated through the ground, a sound that felt both ancient and artificial. The Zyrans froze, their advanced weaponry feeling suddenly inadequate. It was then that the lead Zyran scientist understood. The creature wasn't a pet. It wasn't a guardian. Their scanners were finally piecing together the data. It was an emergency medical AI, housed in a formidable shell of living flesh. It was a battlefield healer, a last resort that humans had unleashed when their hospitals fell during the Great Freeze. The creature's violent biology wasn't for killing. It was a hyper-advanced system for cellular regeneration, tissue synthesis, and viral eradication. The bleeding on the woman's hands wasn't an injury. It was a blood sample she was feeding the machine to analyze her own health. This wasn't a story of a beauty and her beast. This was a story of a doctor and her ultimate medical instrument. The human doctors hadn't disappeared in the apocalypse. They had merged with their final line of defense, becoming one with the very technology designed to save them all. The beast existed to save lives, not take them. The Zyran commander stepped forward, its voice a mixture of awe and fear. "Why? Why hide this technology? We could have helped you rebuild." The woman finally looked up, her eyes clear and unwavering. She offered a small, sad smile. "Because if you knew what we had become to survive," she said, her voice echoing in the silent ruins, "you would have tried to stop us." The aliens looked at the massive form, at the calm woman, and at the frozen city around them. They had come seeking remnants of a lost civilization. Instead, they found a species that had refused to be lost, a people who had sacrificed their very definition of humanity in order to preserve it. And in that moment, the explorers felt a profound sense of dread, realizing they were no longer observing the past. They were witnessing a terrifying, beautiful, and unstoppable future. The galaxy held its breath as the great quantum storm finally passed. Then, the numbers came in, and a stunned silence fell across 1,000 worlds. 14 dead. 14 out of the billions caught in the storm's path. How? The reports were impossible, defying all known models of disaster response. But as the data trickled in, a new terrifying picture began to form. It started with the doctors. They emerged from the digital shadows, their consciousnesses uploaded and networked, performing psychic surgery across entire continents. They bypassed the fried electrical grids and shattered infrastructure, reaching into the minds of the injured, stabilizing, healing, guiding. They were ghosts in the machine, angels in the code, rewriting the very definition of medicine. Then came the hospitals. They didn't just reboot, they evolved. Buildings became living organisms, nanites flowing through their walls like blood, reconfiguring rooms into sterile operating theaters or trauma wards in mere seconds. They learned, adapted, and protected, becoming fortresses of healing powered by sheer, desperate ingenuity. And the beasts. That was the part the galaxy struggled to comprehend. During the storm, monstrous entities had been witness behemoths of pure energy and raw data, battling the quantum chaos. They weren't invaders. They were us. Our engineers, our programmers, our artists. They had sacrificed their physical forms, merging their minds to become digital titans, wrestling with the storm itself, taming it, redirecting its fury. They were monsters born of hope. When the danger passed, they dissolved as quietly as they had appeared, their consciousnesses flowing back into the data streams, their stories becoming the stuff of legend. At the Zyran Council, an old file was pulled from the archives. The one labeled Humanity, Species 734. An archivist drew a heavy red line through the old classifications. Fragile, predictable, rational, all struck from the record. In their place, new words were carefully inscribed. Terrifyingly compassionate, dangerously creative, and a final, chilling note: will turn monsters into miracles. One grizzled alien zoologist, a specialist in predator species, recorded a final log entry, his voice trembling with a strange mix of fear and awe. For centuries, we have studied them, trying to understand their key survival trait. We were wrong. We looked for claws, for armor, for biological strength, but humans do not survive because they are strong. They survive because they refuse, with every fiber of their being, to let each other die. They will break every law of physics, every rule of nature, every boundary of sanity, to save one another. They will even become the very monsters they fear, if it means pulling someone else back from the brink. And somewhere, on a world still blanketed in crystalline dust from the storm's passing, a woman sat by a flickering fire. She was one of the engineers, one of the beasts. She gathered the survivors around her, not just the children, but everyone, and she began to tell a story. Not a gentle bedtime tale, but a saga of fire and code, of sacrifice and impossible hope. It was a story for anyone, anywhere, who still made the mistake of thinking humanity was weak. It was a promise, whispered into the cold night: we will always find a way. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like and subscribe for more tales from across the galaxy.